Welcome back to Record-ology. As you can see, I am here at the record shop here. That doesn't look like something you'd see in the US, and neither does this. In fact, if you look behind me now, you'll see the King's Cross Station. Where the heck am I? Okay, it's Universal, but it's awesome. And when I saw this, I was like, I have to show you guys this. That's a really cool thing. Have you ever come across a record that looks like this? It says Dynagroove on it, and you're like, what is that? Well, one of my favorite aspects of vinyl records is all of the artistic and creative marketing ways that they try to differentiate themselves. And when I say they, I'm talking about record labels like RCA, Decca, Columbia, all of them did it to try and say our records sound the best. Our records are different than those guys, and here's why. So Dynagroove is one of the more prevalent ones, and it's got an interesting history, and it's not just marketing fluff. It really was a new way to make records. You're not going to want to miss this.
Welcome to Record-ology.
So with the use of these records, a couple of surprises and a very interesting history, we are going to together learn about the very interesting history of Dynagroove records. What I love about this is something you can go find today. If you go to your thrift store, I'd say there's probably a 50 to 60% chance you can snag a Dynagroove record for a couple of bucks, which is amazing. So let's jump right into, oh, by the way, we're gonna listen to a Dynagroove record together. So stay tuned to the end, because if you've never heard a Dynagroove record and maybe you don't know why you should care, stay tuned till the end. We're gonna give you perhaps your first listen of what RCA claims is one of the most impressive developments in record player history or record history up until that date. By the way, what is the date? The date that we're interested in is actually 1963. But this story starts a little bit earlier than that. This is nothing to do with Dynagroove, but it has something to do with the mindset of record labels. And that is that they use every inch of real estate in the label itself, even the record label sometimes, to sell you on what makes them unique. What sets, RCA Victor aside from the competition? How is RCA Victor different than Columbia or different than Decca? And one of the best and most entertaining parts of this hobby is collecting all of the advertisements and stuff that goes along with it, the marketing materials, and to read up on it. Some of it's fluff, some of it's, very impressive. This Magic Brain label, I've got a couple of these. This is one of my favorites. This, to me, totally screams like 1939 World's Fair with the giant talking robot. I don't know if you've ever seen that before.
I see a lot of good numbers out in our audience today.
Electro, behave yourself.
Quiet, please. I'm doing the talking.
I'm sorry.
And by the way, he still exists to this day. You can go to a museum and see that robot, which is very impressive to me. I think that's really, really cool. But this was advertising a changer. So not really a technology, so to speak, with the record itself, but with a Victrola branded product. And I think that's fantastic. Now let's move over to Red Seal records real quick. We've talked before about how RCA Victor, when they released their 45 record format, decided to color code all the different genres. And we've got a few of them. Those are really fun to collect. By far the most popular one, and here is one, by the way, that is a Red Seal 45, 50s era. They're like a translucent, and like every genre had a different color, but that goes back prior to the 45 days. This is a 12-inch 78, and as you can see, it says Red Seal record. Red Seal or red always indicated the classical genre, what RCA would consider the most serious type of music for audiophiles that were really wanting high quality pop music and pop records. They didn't put as much of an emphasis early days on those records being as high quality sounding. So Red Seal is something that, started in the 78 days, moved on into the RCA Victor 45 days. As you can see, it says Red Seal records, and even on into LPs. So here we are in the LP era, and we're still using red to indicate a red seal record is classical. At this point, they seem to have dropped off the words red seal records, but red was used for a long time to indicate for RCA Victor that it was classical. Now, one of my favorite things to look for when picking up records are little things that you don't learn right off the bat. It takes some time. Usually you learn them from other collectors. Things to look out for. And one of my favorites is called the shaded dog. So as you know, we've got Nipper in the classic RCA Victor logo pose at the top there. That history of that is amazing. I've heard it dates back to, the original image being on top of a coffin. His owner had just died, and he's confused because his owner's voice is recorded, and that's why he has that look, which is kind of morbid, and they were wise to take the coffin away at some point. But if you find a red seal record like this, and you'll notice that the logo is perched right on top of the hole there, that's sort of your average, living stereo was their good average quality record. But if you want to take it to the next level, there's something called the shaded dog. What am I talking about? So look at the area surrounding the logo or the dog at the top here. It's a little bit shaded, but this is actually not a shaded dog label. But this is, as you can see, it is noticeably shaded. Why is it noticeably shaded? Because RCA Victor used this to indicate what they considered their best audiophile records of the day. These are special attentions paid to the mastering, to the pressing, to the quality control. This is the best of the best of the best for RCA Victor. So if you find a shaded dog label, that's a good thing. I think that's really cool. But at long last, we have arrived at our true topic, which is Dynagroove. As you can see, this is both a red seal record and a shaded dog. And instead of saying living stereo at the bottom, it says Dynagroove. What is Dynagroove? That's what we're here to talk about today. So Dynagroove is a way of making records that dates back to 1963. Again, that is our date. And RCA said, you know what? The majority of people that have record players have a conical stylus. That means the needle tip is rounded. And that is truly the entry level and most common type. Audio-Technica 3600L, a lot of cartridges, ceramic cartridges, pretty much everything up until you get in the $60 and up range is conical. So it's a rounded tip stylus. When you have a rounded tip stylus, it's not getting all the way down in the groove like an elliptical or a Shibata or a different type of stylus, and it's missing some information. Specifically, the information that it misses are upper frequencies, higher frequencies, and in order to compensate for not getting those frequencies, RCA developed Dynagroove to make a conical stylus sound better and more accurate in their opinion.
What you're going to hear about today is nothing short of a miracle. It's dramatically new. It's an RCA Victor exclusive, made possible only through years of research, invention, and innovation.
This is where it gets really impressive. So again, keep in mind this is 1963, okay? So RCA actually developed analog computers to modify the signal as it was put onto the master discs of these records that say Dyna Groove. And the idea was to increase the bass on quiet passages, specifically quiet passages. Sort of like Dolby, this dynamically changed the sound depending on the frequencies being used and the modulation and the dynamic range. It was absolutely cutting edge for the time. So it decreased high-end distortion, specifically for those conical styli that everybody was using at that time, and it increased dynamic range, it adjusted the thresholds and gain curves, it even had dynamic EQ properties, which is fantastic. The whole idea is to eliminate some of what's called tracing distortion. Tracing distortion is something that is introduced from conical styli. Put simply, it's not tracing the groove accurately because of the conical styli not getting all the way down in there. So this technology was able to go in and essentially compress those highs and then expand them when they were played back. It's called a compander. Basically, it packs it into a small package so it can be unpacked. In a really weird way, it's sort of like the analog sound equivalent of zipping files on your computer. So according to RCA, this adds brilliance, clarity, and etc. It also eliminated surface noise almost completely, according to them. So as you can imagine, RCA Victor was very proud of this. They branded it very prominently on their record labels, as you've seen, and on the covers, as can be seen in this Mancini 67 album, which is a great album, by the way. So is it a good thing? And wait a minute, Dynagroove, does that have anything to do with Dynaflex?
What'd you say?
What is Dynaflex anyway? That was developed a little bit later, 1969. Dynaflex discs are just like they sound. They're very flex, emphasis on flex. Dyna, that's a little bit up for debate, but Dynaflex discs used a different type of PVC material that was more flexible and could be pressed way thinner. So for RCA, that meant a few things. That meant that the records used less material, so they were cheaper to make. They were lighter, so they were cheaper to ship, and they were more resistant to breakage, especially in shipping, so there was less returns. So it used completely virgin vinyl, and in that sense, it would be highly collectible or highly desirable because virgin vinyl sounds better than regrind vinyl, which is the majority of what records are made of from the 1960s on. Basically, record companies would take a record such as this, let's say it was returned, it was used, they would punch the hole out, or they would punch the whole label out, and then they would melt the rest of it down and press new records. Well, all of the grit and grime and dust and things that we try to keep out of the records is going to be in there in some amount. So what happened is when that record was melted down and repressed into a new record, there would be little bits of things. People even claim that bits of paper labels made their way back into those regrind labels or regrind vinyl. And all records used regrind used vinyl for the most part, or at least a percentage of it. But Dynaflex used virgin vinyl. So that's a thing. Dynaflex, virgin vinyl. Eventually, this all faded away. Even Dyna Groove was gone by 1970. They had moved on to other things. Interesting to note as well is that Dynagroove records were not used as a process exclusively by RCA Victor. There was non-Dynagroove records made the whole time they were also making Dynagroove records. So it was something special, and the competitors, Columbia among them, thought it was terrible. They made fun of it. They said it was terrible. They said it detracted from the sound, that it took something away from it, that they were putting a filter between the listener and the music, and said it was a not good thing. Yet other people swear by it and say it's some of the most desirable vinyl that you can find are Dynagroove pressings. It was also very important to note that part of that process that they developed in order to increase the quality and accuracy of that high end required introducing some distortion that was then pulled back out upon playback with a conical stylus. Because of that, it's crucial that you do not play a Dynagroove record with an elliptical stylus, because an elliptical stylus in effect can't decode that distortion, and what you get are actual distortions upon playback because it's not decoding it, as it were. So when you play a Dynagroove record, you have to play it with a conical stylus. That is the one thing. So, that's probably part of the reason some people didn't like it, because they had higher end styli, didn't realize, they didn't advertise it, to the public. It doesn't say like, you have to have a conical stylus. Well, let's see what it says. A recording process that is the most significant advancement in the recording art since the introduction of the LP, that's marketing stuff, will deliver to your phonograph all the clarity and beauty of the original performance. And that is something too, rather than make just a high-end record or an audiophile grade record, Dynagroove was about its roots. It was about, and that's why you see a focus on artists right here, because it was all about recreating that original performance. That was a high-end piece. So free from distortion, unleashing clean, free, glorious sound never obtainable from a phonograph record. No special equipment is needed for Dynagroove records. You can play them on your present machine. Now that's risky because that includes a major assumption, which was mostly accurate, in that people of the early 60s, for the most part, had conical styli. But as you can see, it doesn't say anywhere in there, don't play this with an elliptical styli. Those, were very, not popular at that time, but still, it doesn't make it very, very clear that this is only for conical styli. So that's something interesting. Available in mono and stereo, as we both saw, and costs no more than a conventional record. So there you go. This is one of several demonstration discs that they made to demo that new process. And this is a cool one. This is a Buick Dynagroove record. We've had this for a little while. I think I got this down in Texas. But today, and what prompted me to do this show, was I picked up a new record, which I'm going to show you in a minute. If you were in the live yesterday, you will remember I was scratching my head thinking, what on earth are we going to do for today's show? I was waiting for that inspiration to hit, and this is what did it for me. So this is Dynagroove. This is the first and original Dynagroove demonstration record from 1963, obviously RCA Victor. And there it is again, possibly the most revolutionary development since the invention of the LP. So it's so 60s. Look at that console player. Look at the wood on the front of it, the wood paneling. That's hilarious. The Vista stereo. I love it. So again, even though we've now sold you enough to think about Dynagroove, now we want to keep selling you, this time on a console stereo. So this is the record that we're going to be listening to, going back to the artistry and the music. That's what it's all about. True technology is transparent. It disappears and allows you, the listener, the viewer, depending on what it is we're talking about, to enjoy that media without the technology getting in the way. So the goal here is to have and enjoy pure music in its best form. I wish I still had this inside the technical story behind Dynagroove. It does not have that. As you can see, it is empty. So the record itself, let's take a look at the record. It's not the best condition record. This is probably not the best example out there, but it has been thoroughly cleaned. Let's take a look at that modulation. I mean, there's still some polish on there. It looks clean. It looks shiny. The label has some rub wear, not huge. I do find it interesting that it has both living stereo branding as well as Dynagroove. This is a stereo Dynagroove record. And again, this is the first such demo record from 1963. So for $1.60, I'm not going to pass up on this. And a word on living stereo, by the way. Living stereo is another RCA branded, vinyl feature that is fun to find. And I love the art that goes along with a lot of the living stereo records. These represent, the mid-60s thick RCA Victor records, some of the best pressings in my opinion. But there's nothing from a technical standpoint that is remarkable about it. It is a stereo record, but it's a very high quality one. Wow, I wonder what those somebody just practicing their name. That's nobody famous. And then over here's another one. I love this. The living stereo art is just fantastic. You can't go wrong. And I just think that's really, really cool. And I just happened to come across one of my favorite record covers or record album covers is this beautiful Chet Atkins Workshop record with electrifying RCA Victor and their new orthophonic high fidelity recording, which that's kind of 50s. That predates living stereo a little bit. And this thing is in fantastic condition. That is a great, great album. But back to the point about selling the technology, even selling stereo and how does stereo work was something very much on the minds of the RCA Victor marketing people. And there you go. That's the history of Red Seal Records, the history of Dynagroove, of Dynaflex, and even a little bit on living stereo. Now let's listen to an actual Dynagroove record in stereo and see if it's all that it's cracked up to be. So my primary system right now has an elliptical on it. So we're going to use a portable And this is a good one. This is that Victrola Portable Go or Revolution Go. And it sounds great. Now, even though it sounds great, and this is in stereo, hence why I'm kind of off to the right, the stereo separation probably won't be that crazy, but we're really looking for clarity. That's what we're listening for here. So let's put on this Dynagroove record now that we've learned all about it, and it's super special. It's clean, the stylus is clean. Let's drop our needle a few different places. I can't play complete songs for copyright reasons still, but we can definitely give it a good listen. So let's do that. Now it does sound good, but does it sound so different than a non-Dynagroove record? I can't really notice a huge difference. Perhaps one of these days we should do a side-by-side, get an album, 2 copies of one album, one in Dynagroove, one not, and compare it side-by-side. That would be interesting. I mean, for what it is, those higher frequencies do sound good. They definitely do sound good. Sounds good to me. I like the sound of it. Beautiful music. I love this stuff. I absolutely love it. All right, while we're at it, why don't we listen to that other Dynagroove demo record as well? Okay, this is interesting, something I'm just discovering. So here's the record. You know, we looked at it before, but if I flip it over, it looks like this. Isn't that weird? One side is a shaded dog. The other side is an RCA Victor black label. Both say Monogroove or Dynagroove mono. I don't know why that is, but that is something else. There's always more to discover. And one of my favorite aspects of this hobby is discovering and learning more information. Oh, I dropped it perfectly right at the run-in. That doesn't happen very often. And again, it sounds good to me. I wouldn't say that, oh my gosh, I can definitely hear the difference with Dynagroove, but perhaps on vintage equipment, you really, really could. All right, guys, so let me know your comments. What do you think? Did you hear a difference? It's hard to compare it when we don't really have anything to compare it to. So perhaps as a part 2 to this, like I said, we'll get 2 versions of the same record, one in Dynagroove, one not. And maybe we'll also introduce an elliptical stylus to see if we can hear that distortion that they're talking about. But for now, I would say keep an eye out for Dynagroove records. They are something special, they are cool. Keep an eye out for those shaded dogs as well, you guys. Okay guys, and that's going to do it for today. Thank you so very much for being there. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't like this video, give me a thumbs down. But I just want to say thank you. I appreciate each and every one of you. We got lots more exciting content coming your way. If you haven't done so already, consider joining the Vinyl Nation. Link in the description below. We get an extra show this Friday and every Friday. But that's going to do it for now, guys. Happy record hunting, and we'll see you next time.